Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, post-Christmas edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I hope everything lovely and beautiful and expensive was under your Christmas trees. I hope everybody got exactly what they wanted. I hope all you young hockey players out there and hockey parents had hockey sticks under the tree, like my son had the Trigger 8, the CCM Trigger 8 under the tree. He was pretty excited about it. His first big boy stick. He was using youth sticks. Now he's using junior sticks. So now the sticks go up to like $200 or $250 a piece, which is absolutely ridiculous. The first chat I had with him was, you better not break this over the crossbar because you're mad because you guys just lost or something like that, because you're not getting another one. But I'm sure there are a lot of hockey dads and moms that have had conversations with their kids about that there. But be that as it may, we're here with the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Merry Christmas. We've got Mick Colageo here with me, a longtime friend and colleague. I want to thank our sponsors real quick. FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action. Also, Factor Meals, got to give them some props. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Meals done in 2 minutes. Some delicious options: surf and turf and roasted garlic filet mignon and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon. I know it's getting close to dinner time, Mick. I hope I'm not getting you hungry over there. But head to factormeals.com/Hags50 and use code Hags50 to get 50% off your first box. I don't even think I introduced myself. I went running into this. I'm Joe Haggerty, your host. You can find my stuff at Substack, at joehaggerty.substack.com. And I also write for the Boston Sports Journal columns after every Bruins game. Mick, please tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Mick Colageo, at Mick Colageo on X Twitter, which links to my Rink Rap blog on game nights, usually, and also weekend column on BostonHockeyNow.com, and occasional contributions to the old standby, the Hockey News.
Which my son does not know it yet, but I actually just got him a subscription to the Hockey News. Because I think, I don't think it's the same as when, we were young and you had a subscription to the Hockey News. It's a little different now, but I still think it's pretty cool for a hockey player and a hockey nut to have that, monthly magazine come in the mail. I wanted him to have that feeling, that old school feeling that we had when the magazine came in the mail and you were all excited to read it if you loved that sport or if you loved anything really that a magazine covered. So I wanted to give my son that experience. So Mick, thank you for contributing to the Hockey News. I think that'll be pretty cool.
I never contributed to the Boston Globe except for letters to the editor, but me on Sunday morning was first person up, go between the front door and the screen door, grab the Sunday Globe, spread it out over the kitchen table, grab the cold pizza out of the fridge, and make myself a big tall glass of coffee milk, and then read the entire sports section and then go off in other stuff. By then, everybody else is up and the paper's a complete mess. So you're welcome, folks.
Well, I mean, Mick, that's why we do what we do, because we all, I think, had the same experience as growing up on Sundays reading the sports page. And for me, it was, Peter Gammons reading his baseball notes on Sundays, Bob Ryan, Dupes, all those guys.
Other A-listers like Lee Montville, a lot of fun to read guys like that. Bud Collins is one of my all-time favorites.
Yep. But when I was growing up, it was, I loved hockey, but I was a huge baseball fan. Gammons was like the guy. And
he was the gold standard.
His baseball notes whenever you read them, and Duke too, obviously. So,
and obviously Mr. McDonough. So
yes, and that's the other one I was going to mention is the Patriots in the NFL. You'd be all over Will McDonough because he was so super connected. Yeah. And then you'd also see him on TV. Because he always did the national stuff on Sundays too, which was pretty cool to see a guy that was in the Globe also doing that. But I digress about all that stuff. We got to talk about a Bruins win last night, Mick. 4-1 win. A lot of interesting stuff. Some interesting comments from Jim Montgomery talking about how he'd been kind of sucked into a little bit of a negative mindset in the last few weeks leading up to Christmas, and the break really helped him sort of recharge and reset. I think a lot of the Bruins, it was the same thing. I think they looked like they had charged up batteries certainly the Buffalo Sabres are a get right game kind of opponent too. Like that's the team that you want to face coming out of the break if you're looking to get things going north again and you're looking for answers to stuff that's been puzzling you during a 4-game losing streak. So I think there was a lot to like. The secondary scoring was huge. They needed goals from somebody other than Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak. They got those last night. Charlie Coyle, Morgan Geeky, nice goal from Mason Lowry that started things off. Obviously pretty good defensively, really good performance from Jeremy Swayman, but this was kind of the formula. The Bruins that showed up last night, I thought, were the 14-1-3 Bruins that we saw the first 6 weeks of the season, and it was good or reassuring to see them make an appearance again coming out of the holiday break.
Yeah, and I mean, in a little reality check, Buffalo was awful.
Yeah,
yep. They made the Bruins look fast. The Bruins played pesky. Coyle was awesome early in the game. The confidence he had with the puck was just mesmerizing. I loved it. It was I thought Lindholm played with a lot more energy, a lot more carpe diem in his game. I loved seeing that from him because I felt like he had sort of been in a rut, and so it was a good team effort. It's great to see them reach the 20-win plateau. One more in there halfway to playoff guarantee. I mean,
yep.
The real 500 in the NHL is win half your games. You want to make the playoffs and be in the top 16, win more than half your games. If you have an average number of loser points, you're in the playoffs if you win more than half your games. That's how it works. It's always worked that way.
It certainly has.
In the cap era.
Yes.
Every game must have a winner era.
No, and it's part and parcel with if you're in a playoff spot by Thanksgiving, you're going to be there at the end. It's just once you get a certain number of wins and points in the bank at a certain point, it's really difficult to dislodge yourself from the playoff structure. Yeah. You really, especially if you've really banked points and you're up towards the top, it's really difficult to go all the way to the bottom and out. That being said, it is a pretty wide open Eastern Conference this year. I feel like it is more than other years where there's not
it's a big bubble,
a clear-cut favorite. I think there's not many points that separate the top from the bottom, and there's a lot of movement potentially between those teams, which is going to make it interesting at trade deadline, which is going to make it interesting for the Boston Bruins when it comes to what they're going to do and how they decide to proceed. But it's a continued positive thing for the Bruins to show that characteristic where they can pull themselves out of tailspins, prematurely. It doesn't get prolonged. 4 games was kind of shocking to see them lose 4 games in a row, to be honest with you, going into the Christmas break, because, that hasn't happened in a long time, but, they continue to show that ability to pull themselves out. Some really important things going on in that game. Jake DeBrusk had 2 assists. I thought he had matched his entire output offensively from the first 10 games of the month of December, and I thought he was moving around pretty good. He had good battle. Like, he was one of their better players.
Tremendous pass out to the slot. Yeah. Nothing complicated or things we hadn't seen in our lives before as hockey fans, but just terrific how he went behind the net with speed, identified his target, and bang on a tape in a net, bing. It was just great. It was good to see clean, hard hockey with tape-to-tape passes and energy and focus and confidence all wrapped up in one thing. And it was just good to go in there and into their building, like you said, the way it's been. When you go 4 games without a W, Bruins hadn't done that all year. 2 of them they got a point out of, but the feeling is still there. You got to win some games. And they snapped back into it, which was good to see. And now they got a schedule with some teams that had some issues lately. So if the Bruins can put their better foot forward again here, they could start maybe have themselves a few nice weeks right going forward. It would be good to see them right the ship a little bit. And last night was a great step in that direction.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action in NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Did you take enough from last night's game, notwithstanding the Buffalo Sabres suckitude, to think that they are, that they are going to move into a good stretch of play for at least a few weeks here? Because like the concern is, they've shown when they are playing low energy, when they don't have their best skating legs. I think that's when we've seen the real problems come out, when they don't have sort of that max effort ability, and when the schedule starts to catch up to them. We've seen it twice now. We saw it around Thanksgiving time. We've seen it around Christmas. You combine that with perhaps a tiny little lack of urgency because they are in a playoff spot and because they don't look like they're in any danger of falling out. Do you worry at all about that? Because the dog days are coming, the Thanksgiving, the Christmas are the minor dog days. The January, February is when the real dog days come, when there's not a lot of breaks in the season, when things are going to start to pile upon them as far as games played and everything else. Do you feel like you saw enough last night to say, okay, they're going to go on a little bit of a run here and be okay for a while? Or do you still hold some concern as to what January and February are going to hold for this team that has shown when they're not at their freshest and best that they struggle a little bit?
Yeah, I think that we have the potential here. Not everybody's going to be the tomato can that the Sabres were last night, but they played like they were out partying the night before, but didn't invite Krebs because that kid showed up. I don't know about anybody else, but
it's kind of like the Bruins right before Christmas with Morgan Geeky. Like he was one of the only ones that was going on that team. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. Bruins had a team effort. Yeah, I think that I expect a good stretch of hockey here from the Bruins, but you are right. I do think that the roster issues are going to become more relevant in that longer haul of January, February, when they need more of that geeky type physicality in their forecheck, more Frederick, more of that bang around, more intimidating of the defensemen going on their retrievals. I keep on beating this drum, and I realize it's getting to be a drone, but I think that was a big contributing factor to them hitting a wall, because I think they get the hell beat out of them to win the harder games, and they rely so much on their goaltending, and then then their ingenuity, and they pull a lot of rabbits out of their hat and handkerchiefs out of their sleeves, and a little pasta magic and a Marchand courage moment, and somehow they put it together. It reminds me of the Bork-Neely Bruins when the labor wars were starting to eat away at their roster in the early 90s, and they still found ways to win games and have good seasons. But come playoff time, they weren't as formidable as they were 88, 90, because they didn't have everything they really needed. And I still look at the Bruins this way. And so I hope that to whatever extent they decide that they want to make a push this year, that they don't try to compartmentalize a 20, 25 goal stick for the second or third line and thinking that that'll help us gain separation. I think what they need to do is make a move that affects everybody's game. And that's whether it's that big left shot matchup defender, or whether it's that add one more menacing presence in the forecheck who can play top six and contribute somewhat offensively. That eases the game for everyone. It puts energy in all the guys that's not who they are, and nothing against who they are. It's just, but you need more of a certain thing, and the Bruins need more of that thing. And I think that's going to decide for me how things go for them. When you get closer to the trade deadline, I hope it's not a worn out bunch by then, because the first part of the season really told me that this team has hard sledding, and it's hard for them to battle, and without those extra horses to gain you more advantage in those battles.
Yeah, no, and you need that come playoff time more so even, it becomes more pronounced when you get to the playoffs when you're missing those things and if you're deficient in those areas. And I think you're right for sure that there's two or three things when you look at this team and they're clear and present needs on that roster. There's no doubt about it to make them, what would be a really formidable Stanley Cup championship threat type team. I just don't know. I don't think they're getting there this year. And that's to your point of saying, you'd hope they don't sell out for like a shiny object, thinking that that's going to put them over the top. When I don't think that that's what it is. I think that you could start to build some of the things that you need on this team and add some
Right.
of that element. While
Trend it in the right
also,
direction so
but
that even
yes,
if you're not going to get where you want to go, you did a good move going that's going to carry forward,
but
not
you're,
a
but you're,
rental of something that
yes.
doesn't matter in the next 2 years.
Yes, but you're also looking at this season as a positive because you're getting younger players you're inserting them into the mix. You're getting them some playoff experience this year. You're starting that transition of, getting Patra in there and getting him his feet wet. Low rise, same thing. Merkulov, I'm sure, is going to come up at some point in the second half of the year based on the way that he's played down in Providence recently. He'd really been tearing it up. So,
There was a report today on social media that he got recalled, but it
yeah,
wasn't from Boston.
yeah.
It wasn't official that I know of.
Yeah, no. And that may be like I firmly believe it's going to happen for him sooner rather than later
Matter of time.
because he's been playing so well. So I think he's going to be part of that mix of that phalanx of young players that are going to get, pushed into the mix, establish themselves, get their playoff experience, get them started on that journey along with the established crew that they have. And I really think at the end of the day, when we look back on this season, that's what we're going to view this season as kind of that year of transition of going from one thing to another. But, it becomes a little murkier and a little more difficult when the East is wide open, when they've had such a good record. I think the temptation is much bigger to make some big moves. I just don't think you can really afford to do it this year based on what they've done in the recent past, where they are asset wise and where they want to go. But I think they're going to add. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And they may subtract too. We'll see. They have some players that they could potentially deal away from the NHL roster that would free up cap space and make it easier to keep these young players in their positions and keep them in, spots at the NHL level. So I think that may take care of itself if injuries don't. But I continue to view it in a similar way you do, where I'd like to see them make complementary moves rather than feeling like they have to trade for Elias Lindholm. I'm not sure that is the right move for this team based on where they are and where they're going.
Yeah, I don't even know if I want, I saw Calgary down a goal last night at home and watching them play their game and watching Lindholm and thinking, yeah, he does everything well. There's a lot to like about his game. Do I think that he's the answer for the Bruins? Not sold,
Right.
but I'm not salivating. I
Right.
want to see a lot more of this player in order to feel like he can get from the level he's at right now to what the Bruins would want out of him at that level. And if you're going to give up what you need to get a guy like that and pay him, then you got to make sure that he's gonna give you more than that silhouette of Bergeron.
Yeah. And one thing I did really like about last night's game, in addition to some of the other stuff that we talked about, we didn't even talk about the McAvoy play, batting that puck out of mid-air backhanded to save a goal. That was fantastic defense. That was
Yeah.
a highlight reel kind of play
Yeah.
for the season for him, for sure. But also Morgan Geeky scores again last night. Now is
Yeah.
third, I think, on the Bruins in goal scoring in the month of December behind the two big guns, Pasternak and Marchand. He's got 8 points, I think, in 11 games.
Yeah.
He's really come on the radar in this month, and I really think is finally become comfortable in his new environment with his new team. And we're starting to see, I think, what the Bruins saw in him and why they liked him as a player. The second and third effort on pucks, he's a big body. You don't realize it until you see him on the ice, and you also see him in the locker room. He's a big dude. He's like 6'3", 210 pounds. You can see how he uses that strength in battles to win battles all over the place. He's not gonna be a flashy player, and he's not gonna dazzle you with anything that he's doing out there or this breakneck speed.
He's not a pretty skater. But you know what? He's got great hand-eye, and he loves baseball. That's his favorite sport.
Yep.
And hockey became the sport that was his path to the pros.
Yep.
And
but
you can see in the things he does out there that the hand-eye and from his career of playing many sports is translating to his game.
But he's not a burner, you know what I mean? And he's not like one of those guys that's like, that he's not one of those young kids that's like flying around. It's got all the stick fakes and is doing all that. That's not his game. Like what he does is he finds ways to get the puck through you and go through you and get it to the other side. Like he has like a real blue collar way that he shows his skill, which is a lot different, I think, than what you see a lot of the young skill players.
Oh yeah.
I think at first you don't notice it as much, because you think maybe the first couple times he does it, you're like, oh, that was sort of lucky. And then you see him do it a few more times and you're like, all right, that's not lucky. That's like how he plays. And that's what he does.
Yeah. It's got a lot of that Cashman O'Reilly in his game.
Yeah.
Puck follows him through traffic.
Yeah. And it's kind of an old school way that he plays,
Yep.
in addition to winning battles around the net and doing everything else that he does. And I just think the second and third effort wins on pucks in general is a great quality to have. But this is the perfect example of a player taking an opportunity when Zacha got hurt and really stepping up and doing something with it when he started playing with better players. He gets rewarded in that game last night, gets to, some top line center work with some really good players. They moved Zacha over to the wing again. I thought that was interesting. But just any thoughts you have on Geeky and, your thoughts on him now that we've seen him for a while. He's made an impression on me now where maybe I didn't notice him as much the first 2 months. Now I really feel like I know who he is as a player.
Yeah. He, Don Sweeney's made several attempts in his career as Bruins GM to find himself a guy who he could elevate and use in situations either at center or right wing. And a big, strong guy. David Backes, he wanted to be that guy. Charlie Coyle wanted to be that guy. Obviously, these players are not all the same as each other. They have different attributes. Coyle's an elite skater. And as we see, in situations, he can really handle the puck. And Backes obviously got him a little too late. He's a little too broken down. But that's a great attribute to get a player like this. And if you can get it, and Geeky seems to be now the understated guy who Seattle didn't really have room for, given their successes and what they thought of the rest of their lineup. I wouldn't be surprised if they regret that a little bit, because their season has not been great, and he brought a lot of that blue collar to them. And maybe they thought that, they could get it every other way. But Geeky's an important player to the Bruins in this regard. And there's always a temptation to somehow set the line, set the top nine, put etch it in granite, get out a hammer and a chisel, and let's say this is it. And that's not how it's going to be when you get a guy like him. A guy like him is meant to be on a team that's going through changes and needs somebody to step into situations. Not a good face-off guy, at least at this point.
No.
He's not a good face-off guy. So no. I think the Bruins still are going to be looking hard at that issue going forward. But this guy can go over to the wall and play a great game for them. So I think that, this is, I really hope that he continues to have a spot in the top six here for a while, because I feel like the element he brings was sorely missing, and it's a good start for them trending the way I think they need to.
Yeah, and I think with this forward group and with this coach, there's no such thing as like a chiseled in granite, like forward line combination anyway. I just don't think they have the personnel that is going to lend itself to this is the set first, second, third, fourth line. The fourth line's fairly established, I think, for the most part. But I think the rest of them, I think very interchangeable parts. And I think Montgomery likes it that way. And he's certainly in his comfort zone, moving guys around as a hockey coach. And he doesn't get too comfortable with anybody on any line for any length of time. Let's get, Mick, to the Twitter question of the day. Still not sponsored. So if you're listening and you want to get on the Pucks with Haggs podcast, let's sponsor this Twitter question of the week. Let's get it done. All right, this is from Qster CT, and they say the refs need to be held accountable, and it's ridiculous that coaches and players can't criticize legitimate lousy calls without being penalized. Respect is one thing, blind obedience is another. And I think this is a great point. Obviously, you don't want your captain taking unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and that's tough. But that was a horrendous call at the beginning of the game last night, that cross-checking penalty on Brad Marchand. I think he was well within his rights to complain about it. And I really think Garrett Rank, when you blow a call that badly, I think you need to kind of take the the histrionics that come with it from the player. Maybe he didn't realize he'd screwed it up that badly until he went in the locker room and looked at the video after the period was over. But if you have a sense that you just blew a call and you got, hoodwinked into making a bad call, I think you have to take some of that medicine without slapping the extra 2 minutes on. Who knows if he had told him that's enough and Marchand continued after that? I don't know.
Or what he said.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I reffed college and pro tennis for a long time, going back to 1989. 5 U.S. Opens, I was a line judge. I was on the court with the best players in the world.
Yep.
Sampras Chang quarterfinal in 93. Federation Cup. A lot of college matches where I was a chair umpire, roving umpire, and referee. And there's a big difference between arguing the point of call and the other things that go over the line and into another sphere of conversation in which your integrity or any other aspect of you as a person. I don't know what happened. I know Marchand, for the most part, is really good at compartmentalizing these things, understanding what I can talk about, what I shouldn't talk about.
Yeah.
And he's so I don't want to suggest this, but I'm just saying that if we're talking about it as an issue, then to me, I understand why the league directs the officials when they go in this area or they do this thing. This is what we want across the league. And I think if there's anything that's different about hockey now than, at the NHL level, at least, than the hockey I grew up with, it's that the referees, Wally Harris came on the ice, everybody saw the name on his back or the number or whatever error you were watching, and knew it was him and was like booing him, catcalling him and everything else. But they also had a certain trust, a certain belief, and this is the kind of game we're going to get, and it's going to be consistent and we can count on it. Yeah. Nowadays, with two officials and league directives and pet penalties that seem to change every year, and we're in the early stages of the season. We're midway now in the season, but mostly what's boiling over is early season stuff. I think that's when most of the pet penalty stuff tends to dominate, and the rest of the rule book tends to get forgotten. Yeah. I also think that the officials, I think that the teams have their beefs. They're with the league more than they are with the individual officials, because they're acting more as directed and coached up. And this is consistency across the league, how we want to deal with things. And as a result, I think that their ability to be intuitive in those individual situations is harder. It's more complex because they got this other thing in their ear telling them, oh, nope, you just did this. Now I have to do that. And, if they were in a vacuum somewhere and it's the last game they were ever going to ref and it didn't matter, they probably wouldn't do it the way they did it, because sometimes the league directives are not one size fits all. So while I understand why the league wants to go the direction it's going, like the way they do fighting, I mean, you could spend a whole podcast on that. It's weird how now two players who are completely pissed off at each other and organically in the moment of a hockey game and want to fight, they don't let them. They don't want anger in the game. They manage the game, overly manage the game. So, but if a defenseman makes a clean hit, he has to fight. Why? Because the league wants to manage the game. They want to make sure nobody's mad. And I think that, those efforts, I think, have kind of gone overboard and have kind of turned into things that are not good for the game. And so for me, it's a real complex thing when you bring this up to me, because was that a questionable call? Of course it was. Marchand reached with his hand and shoved him down.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And then he started doing this, and right there you go. No, he was actually reached and knocked him down.
I mean, regardless, it wasn't
in his glove.
Regardless, it wasn't
hand sticking in his hand, and he pushed him down with that.
Regardless of what he did, it wasn't a cross check, and the ref blew the call. So, when you blow the call, regardless of whether it's because the NHL is chirping in your ear, or whatever other factors are going on that caused you to call that. You blow a call that badly. You see a captain of a team losing his mind because you blew that call. I think as a ref, you need to give them leeway to complain about it when you've blown it. And I think it's a bad look on you as a ref when you blow them for the unsportsmanlike on top of that, when you've already messed up the call.
Well, again,
the rabbit ears.
I would like to know what happened in that interim because what he said would have to be really known in order for me to say, yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
Yes, and I think it would have to be really bad for him to have called unsportsmanlike conduct. I think that goes without saying. But Mick, we're going to have to save the rest of this for another day. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's give it a little thanks to our sponsors, Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Fresh, never frozen meals, ready in just 2 minutes. Delicious. I love them. Factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. And then also, of course, FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Download the app, spreads, player props, over-unders, so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get going with CLNS's exclusive wagering partner. Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Happy New Year, my friend. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope everybody else out there has a happy New Year, and we'll see you at the rink.